Welcome to our first tutorial for Microsoft Word. In this first lesson, we're really just going to look at what are some of the basics for Microsoft Word, how to get started, and how to use some of the general tools that can be very helpful when you're creating a Word document. So first of all, what you'll see is that when we open up the document, we come up with a blank screen that has what's called a ribbon at the top that has some tabs that have some different options. We'll see our main page or our workspace that we can work with. Also, right now I've got the rulers and guidelines turned on, but we'll get into more of those later. But the first thing that I want you to see right now, you'll actually see that the title of this document just says Document 3. It's because I've had a couple other documents open this morning, and so you can there's no actual title attached to it. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about how to save the document, and so that you could come back and use it later and you don't take the risk of losing your work. So the first thing you'll do is you'll click the File tab. When you click the File tab, first of all, you'll see that there's actually some of my other documents open that I've been in recently, and you'll also see some options for how you can save it. And so the first thing you'll see is that there is the Save and Save As options. And so while these do similar things, there's actually a key difference in what they're used for. Save As is where you're actually going to create a totally new file. It's something that doesn't exist. It's going to actually write a new file to your computer and save it as a new document. If you click the Save option, what this is going to do is overwrite an existing document. So right now, since we actually don't have this saved as anything else, they would do functionally the same thing, but there is that difference in as far as whether it's going to create a new document or write over an old document. And so if we use the Save As tab, it's going to give us some options for how can we actually save the document. Where do we want to save it to? This is very important when you want, because if you're saving your document, you're going to want to know how to get back into that document. So we're going to save it to this PC, and then we're going to select the desktop. And so what that's going to allow us to do by using the desktop, it shows up nice and easy on your desktop on your screen. So when you minimize the Word program, you would actually see an icon created on your desktop. And so we're just going to call this Sample Document. We could give it whatever name we want. We can just type that in. Make sure it's saved as a Word file. This would be the default. We're not going to mess with any of these other options here, but we're going to save it as a Word document right now. These give you some more advanced features if you wanted to save it in a different format to be used on a different computer, or for some other purpose you may want to work with some of those. But for basic purposes and for most cases, we're just going to leave it saved as a Word document. We're going to click Save. And now you see that where it used to say Document 3, it now says Sample Document at the top. And so that just tells us that it is saved. It tells us the name of that. From here on out, if we wanted to resave it, we don't actually now have to go back through that same process for Save As. What we can do this time is if we just click this icon that looks like the floppy disk up in the upper left-hand corner, it will actually save the document and update where we have before. But if you remember back to we had the options for Save or Save As, clicking on the floppy disk works as a save. What that means is that it's going to overwrite it. So if we typed a sample sentence, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and then we save it, we click that, it's going to save that update. But then if I deleted part of it and you said, you know what, I don't want to use that, let's say the quick red fox jumped over the lazy dog. Now if I resave it, that old document is gone. It's been updated with the new one. So that old document no longer exists. So just make sure that when you're saving it, you understand that it does rewrite over it. So if you're editing a document that you want to save and you want both copies, you could actually use Save As again, and it would save a separate copy of that document. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this text here, and actually show you a shortcut that we can use to get some sample text that will allow us to actually work with some text. If we do equals RAND, open parentheses, close parentheses, and then press enter, that actually is going to give us a preset sample text. This just allows us, it's actually some text that's written by Microsoft that explains some of the functions and some of the features that they have. This is a more advanced option, but in case you wanted to ever see that, that is how to add just some sample text that we can work with. You may or may not need to use that, but this gives us that sample to work with. So some things that we're going to see once we have our text up here, our first way is that we can actually start editing and changing some of the document. The first thing that I want you to look at is the set of tabs that we have at the top. These are very important because these give us all of our options to actually make changes within our document. And so you'll see that we have Home, Insert, Draw, Design, Layout, References, Mailings, Review, and View. Each of these have groups of commands and different options that you can use that will allow you to change the text or change your document in different ways. You also have what's called the Quick Access Toolbar, which is used for your frequently used commands, things that you're going to be using often. We can actually add things to this Quick Access Toolbar, but the default is going to be an option to save, to undo an action. This will become redo if we had undone something, which just gets rid of your last action. So if I accidentally deleted a paragraph and then realized, oh no, I actually still wanted that, I can click the undo and it undoes whatever my last action was. It can be a very useful tool. If you make a mistake that you haven't lost everything, using undo and redo can be very helpful in saving you time with that. We also have an option to go to a print preview, which will show you what your document would look like on the entire page, and then a spell check. If we wanted to add other options, there are other options that we can add, like if you're frequently creating new documents or you want to open something different. There are other options, and we can actually add a lot of customization to this, but we're going to leave it as the default for now. And so what I want us to do, we're going to work starting out looking at the home screen, the home tab. And so what that will do, when I click here, it gives us all of our commands, and these are your most basic text commands. This is going to allow you to change what your words look like, your letters look like, the size of things, if you want it to be bold or underlined, and we can actually even add bullets and numbers. So this is a lot of your basic items come from, or your basic functions come out of the Home tab. So one thing that you'll see is that when I clicked on it, this appeared. For some of your computers, it may start out to where this ribbon is already showing up. If we want it to stay up, if yours minimizes every time you click off of it and you want it to always be up there, just click on the tab and then you can click this, looks like a little thumbtack on the right side. When we click that, now it's going to stay open all the time. And so now even if I were typing down in this area, the ribbon stays up. And so the ribbon gives us all of our options and our commands to use. So the first thing that I want you to see, or the next thing in this section that I want you to see, are that there are different groups of commands within that ribbon. So we're within the Home tab, but then even in that ribbon, it's grouped even further to help you out with what you're looking for. So the first that we're going to see is the Clipboard, then there's the Font, Paragraph, Styles, and Editing. And then each command within this section has a similar function or a similar purpose. So with the Clipboard, that gives you your copy and paste options. So if I wanted to make this paragraph, I can copy it, go down to the bottom, and then paste. And it just copied that exactly down there. This paragraph is exactly down here. But now what if I wanted to, instead of just copying it and have the same paragraph twice, I wanted actually to remove a paragraph and insert it in a different location. That would be the cut function. So it's really the same as if you think about using paper. If you cut a section out of a paper that you had written, it wouldn't be there anymore. But if you make a photocopy of it, you have your original and you have it wherever you're going to place your new copy. So let's say if we wanted to take this paragraph and actually just move it all the way down to the bottom, to where it's not going to exist here anymore, it's just going to be at the bottom, we can use cut. It deletes it, it looks like it's gone, but then when we click down at the bottom and we paste, it is now back there, and so it's saved to the Clipboard. We have other options with pasting, so especially if you're going for something that you've copied something from online or from one document to another, you have choices for whether or not you want to keep the same formatting or change it to a different formatting. I usually select merge formatting, which allows you to, it will actually automatically update your text to be the same as the text in the rest of your document. So the same font, the same word size, and everything that would go along with that. We will get to the Format Painter later because it adds a little bit of a more complex issue of how we can copy our formatting. So we will come back to that section. But the next thing that I want us to see is in the Font tab. This is a font group. This is a really important group for us to use because this actually changes the look of our letters on the page. So the first thing, you'll see that you have three options at the bottom of this font tab. The B, I, and U, which stands for bold, italics, and underlined. What these allow us to do is actually shape what the text looks like and give some distinction to different sections of text. So if we want to emphasize some keywords, we can click and drag over top of them to select that word. We can see that it puts a little highlighter point over top or the gray above it so that we can see that it's selected. And then if we click on the B, we can now see that that word is now bold. It's the darker colors and it stands out. Let's just do a couple others just to practice. We can select areas, select words, and bold them. We can select an entire paragraph at a time. You're not limited to one word at a time just by selecting all of it, and we can add the bold there. Makes the words jump out and stand out. And then now if we wanted to use italics, we can use the same process, select a word, this time click on the I, and you can see that it makes the words italicized. It gives a little bit of a different appearance to the letters, puts them at a bit of an angle to, again, provide some distinguishment between one word and the rest of the paragraph. Again, we can do it with more than one word. It just depends on how much we select. The next type of formatting that we have is underline. So let's say we wanted to focus on this. We really wanted to draw our reader's attention. Highlight it, click the U. It works in the same way. It underlines those words. So those are some three basic ways that we can change the format of our words to draw more attention to specific words or sections of our document. The next thing that's important for us to see is how to change the font style or the way that the letters look. That there are all different kinds of what are called fonts, which are different styles of writing the words and letters. So we're going to change, I'm going to scroll down, and we're going to change our font of one of our paragraphs here. So it starts out in the default. This could have been changed on your version of Microsoft Word. For most, this is going to be the default. But so once I've selected the words, I'm going to click this drop down beside my fonts and see that I have a lot of different options that we can scroll through. There are some that are really busy and almost hard to read, some of the scripts that make it look like it's written in cursive, different options that are going to be bold or different stylized versions of the letters. However, we're going to select a fairly conservative one. We'll just select, let's go with that font there. And that will allow us, so you can see that it's made the difference. There is a difference between this paragraph, the way the letters look, and this paragraph. It's not just bold, it's actually an entirely new font style. We can then change the size. If we wanted the size of the letters to be bigger, we can do that in a couple different ways. First, we can click this drop down here and select the actual point value for how large we want the text to be. So if I want it, you can see that it's giving me a preview of what that will look like as I just place my mouse over top of it. This is not permanent, it's just showing us a preview of what that would look like. So we're going to change that to a 20-point font, and so now you can see that those letters are much larger. Now if you don't know the exact number that you want it to get to, you can also use another option, which are the increase font size and decrease font size. It's the A with the arrow pointing up and an A with an arrow pointing down. What this allows us to do is to adjust it. Now this is not just a preview, it's actually making the changes in your document, but it can be easily changed back. And you can see that if you wanted to see what it looks like when it's just a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, we can click through the different options to change the font. Notice that the number value of our font size is changing as well. So it's doing the same thing, it's just in a different way to do that and gives you some different utility and abilities to change the fonts. The next button over that deals with working with our fonts is the change of case option. So if you realize that, hey, I wanted to have a certain word capitalized, maybe in all caps, or I was really bad with my punctuation throughout the letter and I want to go and make sure that I've got my font changed, we can have some different ways to change the font case. So again, it all starts a similar process. Select the word and then go to our options here for what we want to apply to that selected word. So I can make it sentence case, which is just going to capitalize the first word of every sentence. Lowercase, which is going to make everything lowercase. Right now that wouldn't make a change because my word is already lowercase. I could do uppercase, which would change the entire word to being uppercase. I could also, if I had an entire paragraph or an entire selection, I could have it capitalize each word to where now the first letter of each word has been capitalized. Alright, and then now that we have worked with all of our changing formats and the look of our letters, we can actually also use this next option over to clear any of it. So if we decide that, you know what, I don't like the way that looks, I just want to go back to the way it was, we can clear the formatting and it changes it back to what it was. This can be really effective as you are trying things out and seeing what you want to use. See, it removed the underline. When I click that, another option to have removed the underline would have just been to, there it's underlined, click underline again. But if maybe you're not sure what type of formatting that is that's on that word, or you had multiple styles connected to it and you wanted to get rid of all of them at once, you can use this clear formatting option. These three commands, beside where we had our bold, italics, and underline, I don't use them as often, but so that you know what they are, this would just allow you to create a strike through. So if you wanted to show your edits, or if you were editing a paper for someone else and you wanted to show how that would work, click the strike through. It puts the line through it, but allows you to still read the line that was there previously. You can create a superscript or a subscript. It's showing, so if you're maybe writing a mathematics paper, or if you were trying to write some mathematics problems and you needed exponents or some subscripts to go along, whatever reason, or if you wanted to have any kind of explanation that would go along with that. But subscript's going to put smaller words below the letter. A superscript is going to put smaller words or numbers a little bit higher than the level than the word. Just to show you what this would look like, if I then apply a subscript, this is a, get rid of my formatting there, subscript, and then I'll add an exponent here. Just show you with some numbers, since that would be probably a common use. 100 squared. It puts the 2 in a superscript to where it goes above that. Again, I don't use these very often, but if you were writing a paper that had to do with mathematics, it could actually be very useful. The next option over that we see when we get to this last section of the font tab are some ways that we can really add some style to the paper. First, just a word of caution, just be careful when you're using these. Depending on the purpose of your letter, you just want to make sure, or the document that you're creating, you want to make sure that it looks professional, and if you overuse these features, it can look bad, but if you use it correctly and in a simple and more subtle way, it can actually be very effective. Or if you're creating something like a flyer that you really want to be flashy, it can be really useful to use. So this first option is going to give us some text effects, some themes similar to word art. So let's actually take this section here. I'm going to highlight it, which then tells Microsoft Word which section of my document to make that change to. I can click the drop down, and then we have our word art options. You can see exactly what these are going to look like. It actually is giving me a sample to the word. If you watch as I just place the mouse over, I'm not clicking, I'm just placing the mouse over top of the different styles, and it applies that preset formatting to that. So let's just select one. We'll give it a little bit of a, let's give it a little bit of a brighter look. Alright, and then I'm going to go back again using my tools, increase the font size. Alright, now we can see that, and I'll scroll down, and so there we can see our words there, and that has applied that style. Give it a beveled look, which just means that it looks like it's 3D, looks like it's raised off the page a little bit. We also have more options under the text effects, to where we can then create our own effects, really customized to how we want it. We can give it an outline of its own look. We could add a shadow to it, as you can see that some of the preset options have, to where they have, this would really be more like a reflection, but a shadow that would show around it. This effect has what's called a glow, where you can see that it gives a little bit of sort of a fuzzy, like a glow was around it, but a little bit of a border that adds some style to that. The reflection, like we looked at in the other one, it mirrors it, gives it a reflective look. There are some other options. These are a little bit more advanced for if you're going to be for what you're going to be trying to do. So just know that there are more options if you want to. But with this being a basic tutorial, we're not going to go into all of the more complex options. But know that you can stylize your text in a lot of different ways. There are almost unlimited color combinations and ways that we can change that all through this tab here through our textures and effects. Which reminds me, just another thing that I've been doing throughout this video, but that as you are working in Microsoft Word, that can be very effective or very helpful, is that if you place your mouse over top of an option, you'll see that if I just let my mouse hover there, it actually gives me a screen tip, is what it's called, that allows you to, it tells you what the name of that button is, and then also if there is a shortcut. The shortcuts, if you are brand new to computers and don't want to get into that, don't worry about this right now. But shortcuts are ways that if you hold Control on your keyboard and then press the shortcut letter, which in this case would be X, it will actually do that command for you. So like right here, if I wanted to cut the word video, it said that the shortcut was Control X. I can hold Control, press X, and then that way I didn't actually have to go up here and click, but it did the exact same thing as if I had hit this button here. And then I'm going to use Control V, which pastes it down. It's useful to learn some of the shortcuts. There are a lot more shortcuts than I know because I don't use all of them. But shortcuts can be very, very useful. Just a side note with that. So some more formatting options. There is a highlighter option built in to Microsoft Word. You can highlight in different colors. What that allows you to do, I've turned on the highlighter. You can see that my cursor has changed to where it looks like a little highlighter. And then I can go through and select the words that I want to show up in highlighter. To get rid of them, you could use your format clear, or if you highlight again a section that was already highlighted, it removes the highlight from that section. Again, different color options. We can change the highlighting. If you're done highlighting, stop highlighting, or just by clicking off of it. Let's see. So stop highlighting, and then that way we won't be highlighting any new words. The last option within the font group is a option to change the font color of the words within your document. And so we can change them to, and this has kind of your preset colors, or we have more options if you have a very specific, let's say you wanted to match your font to a sports team that may have a slightly different, there are ways to be more specific, but the basics of it, again, same format. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern to how this works, that you highlight the word that you want to change, click on what you want it to do, and then it applies it only to that highlighted section. So I've highlighted my first sentence here. I'm going to click this drop down and then tell it what color I want to change. So this time, different from the highlighting options, instead of placing a color behind that section, we're going to actually change the color of the words themselves. So there's a nice red that then allows us to see that, and it makes it stand out. We can change it to different colors. One thing to note, once you've used a color, it then makes that the default if you want to change a color. So if I wanted to make it exactly the same, I can now just click here and it changes it to the last color that I've used. So now is actually a time that we could use one of those other options that we talked about, which is the Format Painter. All right, so the Format Painter is going to allow us to apply the format that's in one section or apply to one word and apply it to other sections. So I'm going to select a section that has some formatting on it, click on Format Painter, and then now it's like as if I can paint that style onto other sections of the document. So you can see that my cursor changed to a paintbrush because once this word was selected, I clicked Format Painter, and then now I click and drag over the section that I want to apply that style to, and there you go. It added the blue background to it. Also the bold, which that one is. So it changed all of the options, all of the style that had been applied to this section, and then it changed the word that I applied the Format Painter to. A shortcut that could be helpful, if you do Control A, it selects everything. So A standing for all, it selects all of your text within a document. So whether you've got a one-page document or a 100-page document, it will select your entire document by using Control A, or at least everything that's within that section. And so then I'm going to clear formatting. You can see it did actually leave the highlighting there, but it got rid of all the formatting that we had applied so far through the font tab. if I wanted an easy way to get rid of all of the highlighting, would be to, even instead of selecting each individual spot, I can just grab all of that section, everything that has any highlighting in it, highlight all of it, select it again, click the highlight option again, and it just gets rid of all of that formatting. So those are some of your basic features within the font group within the Home tab. The other section that we're going to work on in this video is paragraph. And so paragraph, instead of allowing you to change the individual letters, works more with how does your entire document look? What is your feel to the document? And so we're going to look at everything within the paragraph group still in this video. So some to look at. The first options I want us to look at, the top three, are bullet points, numbering, and then options within an outline. So a multi-level list that gives you like an outline view if you're creating a document. So bullet points, what they do is I'm going to select 3 paragraphs, then click on the bullet point option, and you can see that it actually indents the words in a little bit, and then adds a bullet point to each paragraph. What it's actually doing, what Word is actually watching for, is every time you have pressed enter or you've entered a break, so any kind of a return, it is adding a new bullet point. So it does not have to be by paragraph, but that's every place where there had been a return entered or just what we think of as the enter button. So we could have a list item, list item, list item, and you can see every time I'm pressing enter, it automatically adds a new bullet point. If I'm done with my list, I can just hit backspace to get rid of the last bullet point. If then I want it to go back again all the way out to where it's lined up with the rest of the document, if I press backspace again, actually twice there, it takes me back to where I can start typing a new paragraph. So that's bullet points. Numbered lists work the same way. If I actually select this section that was already in bullet points and then click numbered, it's going to add the numbers to them. With a multi-level list, what that's going to do is give you like an outline where you'd have points and subpoints, to where you might have 1 and then A and then maybe a Roman numeral 1. There are all kinds of different ways to do this, but it's going to give you a layered list to where every time you press tab, it's going to change it to a new style. So in this case, the first level of the list is 1, the second one is an A. If I tab again, the next point over would be Roman numeral. If I want to go backwards and say, oops, I changed that to a Roman numeral, I wanted to go back to the letter. On the keyboard, you can't see this, but I'm holding Shift and then pressing Tab, and it just backs it up one space. So instead of pressing backspace and starting over again, Shift and Tab is a shortcut that will allow you to change the levels of a list. It actually does this with bullet points as well as numbers, to where it will change often the size, or you can still tab them over. So, oops, I haven't changed it yet. So let's change these back to bullet points. Tab, and you can see that it's actually still giving us our next level over. With all of these options, there are 3, and I wanted to show them all to you at once because they actually work in the same way. And if you want a different style to your bullet points, or a different style to your numbers, or a different style of multi-level list, if you click this drop-down arrow beside it, it gives you different options. And so you can see as I'm mousing over them and placing the mouse over them, instead of bullet points, if you want check marks, you can click a check mark. You can have open circles, closed circles, squares, an image that would go in, a diamond shape. You can actually even define a new bullet or new letters, and choose a symbol that would go in, or even add your own picture. If you want your face to appear at each bullet point, you can actually add define a new bullet point and actually upload your own picture. So let's change it to pi. Okay, now all of our bullet points are the pi symbol for some reason. So there's a lot that you can do with customizing the way that your lists look, and that's in those first 3 options there. Add bullets, numbering, and then a multi-level list. Just allows you to define what each point along that list would be, if you want it to be Roman numerals, if you want it to be letters, numbers. Also with numbers, you can do different styles of numbering. They actually include some letters just because it's ordered as part of numbers, even though again, it's not numbers, but it's an ordered list, and so that gives it to you within that option. We can also define our new list and change how we want that to look. The next options under the Paragraph tab are our alignment tools. These allow us to say where we want the words to show up on the page. And so the basics are align left, center, aligned right, and justify. All of these have a shortcut that you can use with them as well, but those are our main areas. So actually the default is align left. So you can see that that one's selected right now. That's what's going to come up automatically. This is sort of the way that we are used to seeing our words show up in a Word document. What that means is that on the left side, because it's aligned left, on the left side they all make a nice neat line. Everything lines up on the left side. On the right side, however, they don't all end at the same point. So this one's way over here, then over here, and so they're not all ending at the same point because the length of our words are different, and if there wasn't enough room to fit the next word on the line, it goes ahead and moves it down. And so, but they're not lined up exactly on that side. Aligned right, I'm going to select all these paragraphs just so that we can see it a little bit better. When I select these paragraphs and tell it to align right, now the opposite is true. It didn't change the order of our words, however, it made sure that each line ended at the same point, but that then it started at a different point. So it's justifying it based on being ending at the right side, all at the same place, rather than starting at the same place. Then for center, what that's going to allow you to do is it centers each line and lines it up in the middle. So you can see that each start and stop at a different point, but they're all balanced in that in a short line, so this line where there's only one word, it starts in the very center of the page, and then everything works its way out from there. Justified, what this one does is it actually aligns it to the left and right. So now you can actually see that every word starts at the same point on the left and ends at the same point on the right. You actually see this a lot of times if you're looking at like a storybook or a textbook that may want everything to look neat and nice and kind of everything fits in its own box. So you do have to give a little bit though in order for this to be possible. There's a couple ways that they can do that. One is by using hyphens and splitting up words. Also, it can add a little bit more space between your words, and sometimes you'll have different amounts of space between words, and so that can throw people off a little bit. But that's how they actually spread that out among everything, is that it starts and stops all in nice neat rows, but your spacing in the middle, because something has to give for that to even be possible, your space in the middle sometimes can be off a little bit and not completely even between each of your words, but that then gives you those nice lines. So those are your alignments, again, within the Paragraph tab. The next option is for line spacing. So you can see the arrows pointing up and down. What this does is it actually determines how much space, it allows you to set how much space is available in between your lines of text. So right now it's set to single space, meaning that it just goes down one space to start the next line. If I want to change that, if I want to increase the amount of space, it will space the words out on the page, but also make them a little bit easier to read. I'm going to select everything, click my drop down, and then click 2. Will go ahead and make it double space. You can see here that it has now actually added extra space in between all of my words, and so it takes up more space on the page, and it also just makes it easier to read and easier to see. If you don't want it to be quite to double spaced, you can do 1.5 point spacing. You can do just slightly over 1 point spacing. We could go up to 3 point spacing. There are actually options when we get more advanced. You can actually change your spacing to be any number that you want. You can change that. You can customize that. But your preset options are 1.5 through 3 point spacing. If we click on line spacing options, it would then just allow us to add different amounts of space in between there. The next thing that we're going to look at are our indent options. We can increase our indent or decrease our indent. And so what the indent does, it's what tells your words where to start on the page. We can actually change this by hand by moving this line here. I just clicked on the arrow and I'm moving all that, and you can see that my text is adjusting as I move it. Or we can use these two options here to increase the indent. You can see that this arrow is moving the same way and they're just jumping across the page, or decrease the indent to make them appear there. And so this would be if you wanted to have a section of your text offset, like if you had a quote that you wanted to offset, or if you just wanted to, just for one sentence, set, hey, let's, for the start of this paragraph, increase our indent, and then we would just do one paragraph at a time. We'll move that back out. Alright, and the next option over, this is one that we're actually not going to use heavily in this video because it doesn't really fit the text that we have here. This allows you to sort. It's a sort option. This is really better to be used in lists or even in Excel. They just add this feature to Word as well. But what this would allow you to do would be to sort through different options. So either by the paragraphs, and then you can have it if there are numbers to the lists, or alphabetical. But we're not really going to get into that because it's a little bit more advanced, and this is a entry-level video for using Microsoft Word. But just know that there is a sorting feature in Word, and that's in the Paragraph tab. This button here that looks like looks sort of like a P, I guess, is to show or hide our symbols, editing symbols or paragraph marks. And so what this does is that right now we can see and say, well, it makes sense. He must have pressed enter here to get to the next line, and then enter here to get to the next line. But if we click this button here, it actually shows where all of our edit marks were made. So you can actually see that there's a little dot here showing that it was a space. There's this the paragraph symbol to show everywhere I pressed enter, which then added a new line. This can be very useful to have on when you are trying to format and edit your document, because if you're saying, well, I want that whole paragraph, or I don't want it to go down to the next level, that it can actually let you see, okay, well, there are 2 spaces in this section rather than 1 space. Just make sure you don't mix up between your periods and your space marks, which is actually what I think I did down there. So then we can say, okay, that makes sense. There's 2 spaces in between that word because I can see that editing mark. If you want them to turn off, it turns them off or on for the whole document. The border option, accidentally shuffled through there. The border option is if you want to add some style or offset a certain segment of your document. So if I want to take this paragraph and place a border around it, I can select all borders, and then you can see that a nice rectangle appears around that section. It's just a way to offset the document. I don't use this very often, but if you're trying to add some style, or especially if you're trying to create a brochure or a flyer, it can be an effective way to do so. You can choose which sides of the document to have covered. So if you want just an underline around that section, if you want just on the left side or the right side, you can customize this completely for what type of a border you want. You can also change what types of lines you want, if you want it to be a thicker line or a thinner line. But that's within the borders option under the paragraph group. And then we can add shading as well. This is similar to our highlight feature. Other than that, it does it for an entire section. So if we wanted that section to show up with a yellow background, we can do so. So there you see that we have gone over really the 3 groups, clipboard, font, and paragraph. That gives you most of your basic tools to be used within Microsoft Word. There are a lot of other options that we'll get to in later videos, but these are kind of your basic tools to at least change the words, change the letters, and change the outline. One thing I just wanted to show you that is, as you are out and exploring Microsoft Word, that with each group there is a dialog box launcher, which actually gives you more options that can be used. And so these are more advanced options beyond the presets that are in the group that are out and available, also advanced options. And so just know that there is a lot more out there that can be changed. There are so many different ways that you can adjust them. We will try to get to some of these in later videos. But for this one, you've got the basic functions of how to use Microsoft Word, how to get started creating a document, and really the best way to learn is just to get out and practice, try out some of these different things, and then as you see things that you like, make note of those and just add those changes. But that was the, again, clipboard, font, and paragraph group within the Home tab of Microsoft Word.